Hi guys. Obviously very different setup today, and you're probably gonna hear my AC in the background, and that's why I'm in the bedroom right now, is because that's where we have our AC. You're just gonna have to get over that because it's hot as balls today. So, long time no see. I mean, it's been like 2 weeks, but I was dropping a couple videos a week, so long time no see. But today we are going to be talking about a subject that has been grinding my gears since I was like 15 years old. So we're going to talk about it today. Lust is killing your brain cells. It's killing your brain. And yes, men, I'm talking to you. No, I'm just kidding. Women can be affected by this as well, but I'm not going to say it impacts the brain differently because that's not anything that I've studied or learned. So I'm not going to speak on what I don't know about. But I do think socially it impacts women differently than men. And I'm going to be talking about both of those things today. And yeah, obviously, I can't put, we're going to call it a corn addiction. I can't put that in the title because, like, YouTube will flag that. But that's also, excuse me, no, wrong number. We're going to be talking about not just the corn addiction, because I'm going to be talking about multiple different aspects of lust and, lustful types of addictions, all that kind of stuff. We're going to get into it, okay? But basically, a little bit of a background is that the very first time that I actually did research on like how your brain is impacted by lust or corn was when I was in an AP seminar class in high school, and I was in my sophomore year, and I had a lot of balls in high school and I didn't really care what people thought. And so I was like doing some research, and this is where I found out that a lot of this, I don't know, I'm probably just going to end up editing the words anyways. The women who are in pornography, a large percentage of them are sex trafficked. And I'm sure that number has changed, and I'm gonna, look that up and put the actual percentage on the screen with also like resources where you can go and look at that yourself. But a large percentage of women who go into work are being sex trafficked. And then there's a lot of new facets today, like a bunch of new platforms, I guess I should say, and ways for young women and women to get started in this type of thing. And I just want to talk about the culture around it and like how our society has really normalized that. And then also, so that's like the first thing I did. I did a bunch of research about that. And then later, I was 17 and I was doing Running Start, and I was in a college psychology course. And my professor made us do 2 presentations per semester. Yeah, semester. Quarter. What the was it in college? Quarter. High school was semester. College was quarters. Yeah. Every quarter we would have to do multiple presentations, and he gave us a list of things that we could talk about in my group. We received that list, and one of the things on it was pornography, and I looked at my classmates and I was like, I know this is going to be really weird and sound very odd, but we should do this because I already have a bunch of research on this topic. I'm pretty knowledgeable, and so I feel like we will have like already some standing. But it was a completely different aspect of it. It wasn't just like, it was specifically how it impacts the brain, because obviously a psychology class. So that's where I learned a whole bunch of how lust really like actually infests your brain, and how I feel like it's so normalized in our society because obviously it's not a physical thing like a drug. It's just like how you can get addicted to a toxic relationship. It's like there's certain things where people don't actually like view as that severe, and they have a lack of like understanding for it because it's not, it's not a broken bone. I can't see that it's visibly broken, so like I don't care. And we're gonna just like whatever, it's normal. And it's not. So I did a ton of research, and I ended up figuring out that how pornography impacts your brain, and then also as technology has advanced, like different ways that porn has like rooted itself into our social media. And nobody likes to talk about that because the men who follow a bunch of half-naked women don't want to be called out for having a porn addiction. Yeah. So hate to be the bearer of bad news. Actually, no, I don't. You have a addiction. So like first off, what happens to your brain when you get addicted and consuming naked, half-naked content? It literally is a supply chain system for your brain. And so obviously when you're getting off to these things, that is releasing dopamine or oxytocin. It's releasing the feel-good chemicals in your brain, and that's what we get addicted to, right? That's what drugs cause. That's what all these substances that people get addicted to, it's not just because of the substance, it's what our brain ends up releasing in response to it. And so you can become numb, right? You can gain a tolerance. So it's like you do a hit of something, or you take something for the first time and the dosage is really small. You have to up that dosage over time because you are developing a tolerance to it. And so the same thing can apply for lustful content, pornography, half naked, whatever. The same thing applies. It's like when you're intaking this content, it becomes insatiable. You cannot, like, you feel like you can't stop it, and it just becomes, it starts off like every other habit where you're like, I don't do that often, it's no big deal. But the thing is that once you give into that and you continue to do it, you then start looking for other things that start to release that chemical, feel-good chemical in your brain, because you have numbed that part of your brain so much to what you're watching. Now you have to explore more things, and that's how people get into like kinks and fetishes. And obviously that can come from like past trauma and stuff like that. And I'm not here to kink shame anyone, but like fetishes is something that's different than a kink. And that is where it becomes, if you're getting it from this overload of dopamine, oxytocin, whatever it may be, now it becomes never enough. And now you're starting to search some very concerning things, because you're like, it starts off as one thing and then it turns into something completely different. And an example of this is, I believe, Ted Bundy himself in his interview, and he said it started with porn.
You as honestly as I know how, what happened. And I think this is a message I want to get across. But as a young boy, and I mean a boy of 12 or 13, certainly, that I encountered outside the home again, in the local grocery store, the local drugstore, the softcore, what people call softcore. But as I think I explained to you last night, Dr. Dobson, in an anecdote, as young boys do, we explored the back roads and sideways and byways of our neighborhood, and oftentimes people would dump the garbage and whatever they're cleaning out of the house, and from time to time we come across pornographic books of a harder nature than, more graphic, you might say, more explicit nature than we would encounter, let's say, in your local grocery store. And this also included such things as, let's say, detective magazines and more
those that involve violence.
Yes, and this is something I think I want to emphasize, is the most damaging kinds of, again, I'm talking from personal experience, hard, real personal experience. The most damaging kinds of pornography are those that involve violence and sexual violence, because the wedding of those two forces, as I know only too well, brings about behavior that is just too terrible to describe.
Now walk me through that. What was going on in your mind at the time?
Okay.
And like, obviously, right, human beings are not so linear that we can just like pinpoint one exact thing that made someone develop a certain way, because it's nature versus nurture is the entire discussion of psychology, right? And science in general when it comes to how human beings develop and who they turn into. So obviously there can be genetic dispositions, there can be all sorts of things that are involved with that. However, there is scientific backing, there's psychological backing to that statement of him being like, no, it's actually pornography that got me to this point, because of how people who are addicted to porn, it changes the chemistry of their brain. That is something completely possible to happen, because you're watching something and then you're numbing that part of your brain. So now it starts to develop into weirder, creepier, more concerning fetishes. And then it turns into, well, I need this in person. I need this in real life, because now it's not, you just become so fixated on it, and it becomes like that drug that you are addicted to. And then I did research when VR was coming out, because before AI we had VR, and that was when I was in high school. Child pornography had been upped by 200%. And I'm going to try and find that, because I remember in my paper putting that somewhere. So hopefully, I think I still have some old documents and stuff that I can pull that from. But the development of porn now, the development of VR with porn, now we have AI, has done like irreparable damage to our society. That's why obviously if like if you have intelligence with like media, you understand like not to post your kids on social media, because like things have developed with such advanced technology, like it's putting them in grave danger. And trafficking can happen online a lot easier, or starting from online like a lot easier than you may think. So obviously not every person falls under the category to where it gets involved with things that are quite literally illegal, such as child pornography or trafficking, or like the more darker side like Ted Bundy. Like obviously I'm not saying that happens to everybody, but I'm talking about examples of like worst case scenario, what a lustful behavior and what addiction can turn into. And so, but I think because people take it in small doses, like it's so normalized to have your entire feed of social media being like covered with that, people like normalize it. And so I kind of wanted to talk about that like in relationships as well, is that like a man typically what I feel like, I mean, I've only been in 3 relationships and I haven't really experienced this specific case scenario for myself, but like I do find, just from what other women speak about, is that a lot of men, if that's on their feed and that's all they see on their feed, they also are struggling with a porn addiction, which then comes into the intimacy of the relationship, right? Online cheating, social media cheating, which to me is the same shit. It's like if you're stepping outside of the relationship in any capacity, that is cheating. And I feel like calling stuff micro cheating or X, Y, and Z, like, it's minimizing it. And that comes from men who essentially belittle or invalidate women's feelings towards this. And so new terms have had to be created because it's always well, I didn't technically this, that, whatever. I didn't technically cheat because I didn't actually have intercourse with someone, but like, this is a completely different age, all right? It's not like before where you sent letters to someone in a war and you had to go sneak to the neighbor's house. Like, it's not like that. We have social media. So I feel like this is something that's been kind of almost like left behind when it comes to the conversation of relationships, and it's developed so quickly. So a lot of like the older generations didn't deal with it in the same way that this generation and the generations younger than us are dealing with it. And so a lot of men like to come online or talk about their relationship and basically be like, or lack of relationship, and be like, well, you know, my grandma really held it down, and my, like, oh, I want that old type of love where women really held it down, where women X, Y, and Z, where women blah, 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 gender role, gender role, gender role. And it's like, well, first of all, men used to go off to war. Men used to build a house. Men used to provide for women financially. And then like Mima and Papa didn't have you in every single bitch DMs on Instagram calling her fat. They didn't have to deal with that. If someone was cheating, they did it the old-fashioned way by meeting someone at the grocery store or work or something like that, which is horrible. Like, cheating is horrible, but it's like, just because it didn't, you're using something as an example to compare to a time where that thing didn't exist. You're like, oh, well, you're always questioning about being on Instagram and my likes and being in people's likes and blah, 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 blah. Women back then never accused men in that type of way. I'm like stuttering so bad right now, but like, when I get passionate about stuff, I just do that. But it's like, women back then never used to do that shit, blah, blah, blah. Social media didn't exist, bro. That's why. It's not because it's not because women were just like so much more submissive and what the fuck ever. That's not the reason. It's because that didn't exist. I promise you, back then, if social media was a thing, men's lust would still be an issue, and they would still be utilizing social media as a tool to feed their lust, and women would still have a problem with it. It just didn't exist. So society changes, relationships change with technology, and I feel like people try and separate those two things, like, oh, social media just isn't real, except actually it is, because it's having a very real impact. First of all, your conversations with these people are fucking real. You liking what you're seeing and being addicted to what you're seeing, which is basically half naked or naked material, which is pornography, that is real. What it is doing to your brain, causing a chemical difference in your brain, is real. The impact it has on the intimacy in your relationship is real. All of those things are real. So trying to invalidate and gaslight women by basically, like, I don't subscribe to that belief whatsoever. And what I'm about to say applies to monogamous people. I'm not talking about if you're polyamorous or open. I feel like those are completely different sets of rules, and I feel like those things function outside of the norm of society, right? So that's a whole other type of conversation. And I'm also not saying one is better than the other. Whatever, different strokes for different folks. But I'm talking about people who are in monogamous relationships or claim to be. And then it's like, I feel like women have been exposed to men's shitty behavior over and over and over again. So instead of standing up for themselves and setting boundaries, they just allow this lustful behavior to continue, because the idea of being single is scarier than being with a man who doesn't respect you. And I feel like women just think that in order to be in a relationship with a man nowadays, because of social media, you just kind of have to accept certain things, because men collectively have gaslit women to a certain point. Men do things for men, you know what I mean? But when it comes to us as women, it's like, why are the bird-brained and the pick-me's always like so ready to be male-centered and be like, oh, play cool girlfriend, and be like, oh yeah, it's totally fine that my man is in every single DMs being like, you're so hot, you're so sexy, hearting their stories. Their entire algorithm is literally just naked women. They have an addiction to porn. he, like, the disrespect is insane, not just towards you as his girlfriend, as his woman, but also to women in general. Like, if you are a feminist, I feel like you should not be okay with this kind of behavior. And obviously, if you're single, I mean, like, do what you want, but at the end of the day, people are gonna do what they want irregardless. So, like, I feel like a lot of times people will come at it with, like, well, you can't control anyone, so, like, I just have to be okay with it. Wrong. You can't control anyone, but you don't have to be okay with jack shit. You can walk away. That's what a boundary is. You're not controlling someone else, but you can say, hey, I need to be treated this way. And then also just discernment. That's like a huge red flag. If a man, if his entire feed is gaze into his soul of how he views women, to gaze into his brain and what chemistry is going on up here. Because why would you want to be with a man who only objectifies women? Also, just like this idea that, like, oh, he should be lustful towards women because that means, you know, he likes women. He's a straight man, so obviously that's what he should be doing. But arguably, to that point, the men who are so lustful towards women, who have a insane body count, like 100, 200, like just insane, they're trying to fill a hole that can only be filled from the back end. They want to get down. They want to get down. That's the... Those men are DL. I don't know what to say. And also, those are the same ones that are, like, cosplaying what they think a straight man is like. So that's why they're, like, overly sexual towards women, is because in their brain, they're like, well, straight man is always going to be trying to every woman he sees. It literally just feels like a cosplay. Because I feel like the most secure men who don't have issues with lust, who are not secretly gay, are able to have platonic friendships with women, see women as human beings and not objects. And so they're not just, like, their brains are not fried from their addiction. That's another aspect of addiction, is the objectification of women. And so, like, I find that objectification to be very disgusting, and I find it a red flag. So it's like, I'm not gonna, if I see that in a man's behavior, that's not gonna make me feel like, oh, that's something that I just have to accept. That's gonna make me feel like, not only is this gonna cause intimacy issues in our relationship down the line, but it's also, like, gonna impact how you communicate with me. You don't see women as humans, clearly. They're sex objects to you. So, like, when shit's real, when shit's not just about sex and meeting your physical needs, what happens then? You don't meet your emotional needs, your own emotional needs, because what are you trying to escape in life? It's just like a drug. It's just like alcohol. It's just like whatever you might use as a vice that you become addicted to, it's escapism. So what are you trying to escape? Your own emotions. You're not emotionally intelligent enough to handle what the you're going through. So why do I think that you, as a lustful man who has this addiction that cannot control yourself, what makes me think that you're going to be able to be there for me emotionally, or hear me in an argument and see me as a human being, as a woman, and not something that you just have sex with, that inevitably becomes a toy that's broken when I have emotions, when I have something to say about something you did that I didn't like. And so I feel like as women, we need to stand up and stop allowing this behavior from men. And don't get me wrong, I've been in an abusive relationship before. I'm not saying that, like, if you get into a bad relationship, that's your fault. And, like, I have empathy, okay? So I'm not saying if you're in a toxic or abusive situation that's 100% your fault. But something that I found as I get older is that, like, I think some people, okay, I gotta stay on track. As you get older, if you tend to meet the same people over and over again, the same situation over and over again, it's because there is a lesson that needs to be learned there that you're not learning. And hence why you keep on getting put in the same situation. And I think some people try, especially online with the TikTok, like, manifestation lingo, where it's like, don't think bad thoughts because then everything bad is just going to happen, because everything that you think in your brain manifests. And I think that's really bad for overthinkers or people with OCD. Like, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think you can have bad days and have negative thoughts sometimes, and, like, you shouldn't wallow in that. Obviously, I think working towards positivity, self-love, those are very important things. So I don't think it's okay to enable behavior that's harming you in the long run. But we're human, okay? We're going to have bad thoughts sometimes. We're going to have low self-esteem days. Like, we're going to feel like that sometimes, okay? And I feel like the right person will help you through that and help give you positivity and help love you through that. They're not going to, like, feed off of that and prey on that. But sometimes, you know, life happens. Nature versus nurture happens depending on the kind of connection that you had growing up, like attachment style that you had growing up. You might find yourself in a toxic relationship. And I'm not saying that that's your fault by any means whatsoever. I'm not here to guilt any victims or shame any victims, but I am saying, though, as you get older, I think that that's just a lesson, right? It's just like with kids, okay? We tell them, like, hey, don't Stop standing on that thing. Stop standing on that thing. What do? They eat shit. And then that's supposed to be the lesson that you learn, right? Okay, that hurt. You broke your arm. You started crying. You got a bruise, whatever. It hurt. You don't stand on top of that thing anymore. Sometimes people don't learn. You go right back and you stand on top of that shit. But there's no one else there to get you to stop doing that and to teach you that lesson except you. You are the person that can stop that. So I do think sometimes when it comes to cycles, what you allow is what's going to keep happening. Okay, there's people in this world who just don't have the best interest for you. Like, they don't have your best interest at heart, not because you don't deserve it, but because they're bad people. Sometimes you're going to run into bad people and you got to know how to sift through that. And me personally, I grew up in a super Christian religion. A lot of videos talk about that, and my parents wanted to pretend like sex didn't exist. Boys are bad, boys are gross, ew. But then when it comes to like specific instances, it's like, okay, but what's a red flag genuinely? Like, oh, a man who is overly lustful and does nothing but find women as objects, and it's like this new age thing, right? My parents are boomers. They didn't know to tell me, like, if a man has 110 bitches on his Instagram and they're all half naked, that's a red flag, right? And to some people, you should think, isn't that just common sense? But sometimes common sense isn't so common. There is a deeper issue at hand. So it's like, specifically, there's something to be said there. Why is it so normalized in our society to objectify women or to view women as nothing but sex objects? I just think that's super, super weird. And then also you have other platforms, right? Like fans. And then TikTok is a platform where 13 and up can be on there. And we all know that even younger gets on there because our generation, we were on socials younger. It's really easy to lie. And it's like, okay, so all of these women in their 20s, 30s, whatever, are glamorizing sex life, the sex work life, and there's so many people who have come online and actually said don't do that, who are in sex work, who have said this is not a choice that I wanted to make myself, this is not something that you should glamorize. And then these young girls become adults and stuff like that, and they're getting older the day they turn 18. They're doing these things because in their brain it's like this like new age feminism almost, to be like, you can do whatever you want with your body because I'm now 18 and I can do whatever I want with it. But there's no guidance there. There's no, hey, you should care and love yourself and you should protect your body from people who want to use it and don't have your best interest at heart, right? And I actually absolutely had to come on here and make an extra clip to clarify what I was saying, because I don't think I was being as articulate as I would like to be. But what I'm trying to say is that women can and should be able to do whatever they want with their bodies, period. I am pro-choice all the way around here, especially for grown adult women choosing, doing what they want. All I'm saying is that there's influencers, there's people online on the women's side of what it can look like getting involved in like the lustful whirlwind of it all, who do who have houses and are bringing 16 and 17-year-old girls around it and maybe aren't recruiting them yet, but it's basically recruitment because as soon as they're 18, they're joining the house, they're coming around, like Camilla, I believe is her name. And then they go on podcasts, which is like longer format, when on TikTok they're out here being like, oh, join our all girls house, like join the only blah blah blah. But then on podcasts you're saying, oh, I would never let my daughter do this because I'm getting stalked, and there's men who think that they have the right to harm me, the right to my personal information and stalk me. Or like they meet men in public who are fans and they're like groping them or touching them without permission because men think that's the objectification I'm talking about. They watch things online and they no longer view women as human beings, and they do crazy like that. And no matter what a woman chooses, a woman does not deserve that. Even if she chooses sex work, she absolutely does not deserve that. She's still human and her boundaries should be respected, period, point blank. But what I am saying is that becomes harmful on the women's end is I think when women who have experienced these negative things go online or talk to younger women specifically about it and don't mention any of the negatives. So these very young girls are freshly turning 18 and joining this just thinking that it's going to be a cash cow, like easy money to make, and not realizing what they may be getting themselves into long term and the mental effect it can have on them, as well as the fact that like there's also women who are literally creating this and then will leave these platforms, these, you know, not safe for work platforms, and then will keep on employing girls and take a percentage of their cut. And so it's like internet pimps, and it's just like not everything is super rosy, and I think that education needs to be spread about these topics so that women can, of course, do what they want with their bodies but are making well-informed decisions about it. I'm not saying like there should be a sense of like you're an adult, so it's like if you have, like, I'm not saying just, oh, you had sex with someone, ew, disgusting, you should feel ashamed. Like, I don't want to go all the way, swing the pendulum all the way over. I'm just saying some young women end up going to sex work when it's something that was, because it's glamorized by society, and it's not actually glamorized. It's not something to be glamorized. And these people are talking about getting taken advantage of. It's just modern day, and then these young girls don't have the education, and they don't understand, and they get into something, they think that they have full autonomy to be able to easily get out of if they want, and it doesn't work like that. And some of these girls end up getting sex trafficked. I mean, check out all the only houses that got busted. There was one in Bremerton, I think, or Bellevue or whatever, which is close to where I live. There were Andrew Tate, people like that, who have these trafficking rings through platforms like OnlyFans. And so pornography has always been something that's huge in trafficking. A lot of the women are not participating willingly, and yet it's still something that is so glamorized by men and women. And then young girls get into it thinking that it's something that it's not. And I'm like, that's such an unhealthy culture to create around it. Obviously, if someone's going to make a choice for themselves, like, they're going to make that choice. But I feel like everyone should be well informed, and certain things that aren't so, peaches and rainbows should be made to, like, seem like it is that. So I'm just like, these are red flags that people should be paying attention to. And then you as a woman, if you're in a relationship with a man, why would you be okay being with a man who aids to the objectification of women, who aids to things that are literally trafficking women, who teach women that you are just an object and nothing more? Why would you be okay with that? Why? Like, I don't know, we as women, I feel like we all know what it's like to be walking on the street, and you could be wearing a trash bag. You could be wearing shorts, you could be wearing a skirt on the other end, whatever. And a man will, like, you in public, like, no matter where you are. You could be in church, you could be at the grocery store, you could be walking on the street, you could be at the club. No matter where, you're gonna get essentially, and it's an uncomfortable experience. You have a man be okay with, like, okay, a woman is walking on the street and you're like with your man, and you guys are the kind of people to be like, oh, we're objectifying women together. First of all, did that woman consent to that? For me, it's more about consent, because I don't like to get by a man, period. I think it's gross, and it's not better for me if I view a couple and I feel like they're objectifying the out of me in public. I think that's gross. And before anyone wants to be like, you've never had that happen, yes, the I have. I am in the music industry. There are people, when I first started music, that were couples that I felt like I needed to run from, because their energy that they were giving to me, bro, I'm not cool with it. It's just like, just because you're a woman that's with a man doing it doesn't now make me all of a sudden be like, that's totally fine. No, like, you're literally aiding and abetting a man being disgusting. And I'm not cool with that. Like, I did not consent to that. That's why I feel like threesomes are completely different. Still not for me. Still absolutely not for me. But I'm just saying, like, the three parties that consent to that, if you're a couple that you're okay with that, the person that you're having sex with is literally consenting to that. You do you. But, like, where is the consent? And you guys literally women out in public. And again, personal opinion, and this has to do with monogamy. I understand other things are different, but dating new age is fucking hard. It's really easy to feel like the dating pool is trash, but I promise you, there are people out there, there are men out there that are good, that don't normalize this kind of behavior. And you're not crazy for feeling like being with a lustful man is not for you, or that a lustful man is disgusting. You're not crazy for that. And then also, it's like, why can't social media be a tool for helpful and useful things? Like, why can't you, like, do you read books? Do you go to the gym? My man likes Pokemon. 90% of his algorithm is Pokemon. Like, why? You are creating the algorithm by what you enjoy to watch. So I'm just wondering, why is it acceptable for men to sit there and their entire feed is half naked women? To me, that also is a red flag, because it's like, oh, you don't do anything else with your time. You have no other interests. Like, you can go on my algorithm and the next scroll is going to be a book review, and the next scroll is going to be someone talking about societal issues. There's a lot going on right now that needs to be discussed. That's a lot more important than your porn addiction, than you fulfilling your porn addiction. And then, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, where's the versatility? So it's like, that's all you do? That's all you do. There's people who run businesses on their social medias. Like, are you, like, you can make money from that? There's tons of things that you can do. That's why I don't blame the women who are posting like that, because they're making money from that. What are you doing, sir? What are you doing, sir, except for being an at-home creep? weird. What I'm saying is that that's the kind of behavior where when men have a porn addiction, a lustful addiction, it changes their brain chemistry, and then men are also extremely violent already and are women's natural predators, and so then they start doing crazy, disgusting shit, but then blame the women, and they're like, well, you deserve it because that's how you post, so you deserve acts of violence and X, Y, and Z. Which we all know, as earlier I stated, Ted Bundy himself said he started committing those acts of violence because of read a book. What are your interests outside of that? What is your interest outside of half-naked women? Now, I feel like if that's all you're pursuing, how do I expect you to stay loyal? Anyways, that's I know this was kind of all over the place, but I have this conversation all the time with my man, with my best friend. People who are around me in my immediate circle know that I talk about this a lot, and I have been since I was literally 15. So if anyone's watching this is not a direct at or anything like that. I have friends and stuff who are polyamorous and open, and I'm not talking about that. Okay? I do think that you can have a porn addiction and lustful issues, whether you're monogamous, polyamorous, or open, whatever it may be. I think that can exist, but I feel like when it comes to boundaries, right? When people are respecting boundaries, I think that's a whole other conversation, okay? Okay, please and thank you. Everyone's allowed to have their opinion. This is my opinion, and if you don't agree with it, that is perfectly fine. But I am talking about the things that are a little bit... I'm not just talking about the pictures on social media. I'm not just talking about... I'm not just talking about men who cheat. I'm talking about a whole complex issue, a societal issue that has a lot of nuance to it. And so addressing one thing without the other can often leave the conversation feeling lacking or just, black and white. And this subject is anything but that. Okay? So if you have anything to add, I would be happy to hear your opinion down below in the comments. And I respect everybody in what they do with their life, but what I don't respect is men objectifying women without consent, and people who have issues with lust, men and women, and it alters your brain chemistry to the point where you have issues with intimacy and things like that. I think that's harmful to you as an individual, your relationship, and society. And I'm also not okay with normalizing things that are actually behind the screen or behind doors pretty harmful and have a lot of caveats to it, and you're offering it up on the silver platter, all of the pretty aspects of it, and you're not giving the general public, including very young girls and young women, the full scope so that they can make an educated decision. Or people who prey on young women, people who use these things that are supposed to be autonomous and their choice as means to traffic or get money from them. I'm not okay with any of that, and that's kind of the greater theme of this video, okay? But I also just don't like men that much, so there's always going to be some man-hating, man-haterade in my videos. But yeah, thanks for watching. That's all I have to say about that. Socials will be linked down below and at the end of this video. Bye!